The title of my speech is Video Games, the History. The specific purpose of my speech is to inform the people of the history behind competitive video game play. The thesis statement or central idea of my speech is going to be that most people are not familiar with the history of video games and how much they help people who play them on a daily basis. While most people believe that nothing good comes from video games, playing video games all day, the truth is video games are how some people pay their bills or how some people cope with different kinds of pain. As someone who plays video games daily, I know for the fact that it helps relieve stress and allow people to get away from problems that they're not ready to face yet. I want to go over the history of video games, how there's good that comes from playing different video games, and how people use video games to pay their bills and how some people use them to cope with pain or a stressful situation. I'd like to start off by giving everyone a short history of video games. The history of video games started in 1958 when physicist William Higginbotham created what people believe to be the first video game. In 1972, the first home console was invented. Now there are different brands to create consoles and other devices for people to play video games. There is now what people call the console war, which is simply people arguing over which video game console is the best to play video games on. Video games used to be played for fun, and sometimes still are, but now people use them and play for money. Moving on from the history of video games, I would like to talk about how there is good that comes from playing different video games. People think that video games are not good for children because of the violence linked to some games, but that's not true. It has been proven that video games slows down the aging of the brain. Tests have shown that playing fast-paced video games allows people to take in more sensory data. Video games actually help make people less antisocial because they bring people together at gaming events. One thing that people forget about is video games can help people stay fit by playing different fitness games, such as the Wii Fit or the Wii U. The last thing that I would like to touch on is how people use video games to avoid depression or cope with a painful situation. Researchers in New Zealand found that video games can be used to treat mental disorders such as depression. It was found that people who use video games to help with depression did better than people who did not play video games. People who have been known to use video games to avoid a painful situation at home, such as a death in the family. Video games are an escape from the world for some people as they try to find happiness for themselves. In conclusion, the history of video games is a short but great one. Video games are all around good for people, and they do more good than people think they do. We have learned today about the short history of video games, how they are good for people, and how people have used video games for different kinds of money, and how video games can help treat depression and allow people to cope with different situations. With the knowledge you've acquired today, I hope you have a better understanding of video games and the good they do for people. Everyone should allow their child the opportunity to play video games for one reason or another, as there's all kinds of good that comes from playing video games. There are different types of video games for people to play, such as the shooting games, fitness games, learning games, and other kinds of video games that allow people to do different things. It has been shown that researchers have found that when people who played one type of video game, it helped with their depression, while people who played a different type of video game, it didn't help with their depression. Sometimes it was found that people who played faster-paced video games had better eyesight than people who played slower-paced video games. This is just one other reason for people to be able to play video games on a daily basis, as it allows for them to take in more with their brain.